You know that tight feeling in your chest when you realize someone's been lying to your face for years? Not a stranger, not some faceless scam artist in another country, the brands you trusted, the products you reached for without thinking. That slow, creeping nausea when the math finally hits you, hundreds of dollars bleeding out of your household every single year, funneled straight into an industry that engineered your dependence from the start. Picture this. You're standing in the battery aisle. Your flashlight died last night during a storm. Your kid's toy went silent mid-birthday. The remote is dead again. You grab the same pack you always grab, feel that familiar sting at the register, and somewhere in the back of your skull, a voice whispers, "Why does this keep happening?" Your hands do the motion anyway. Wallet out, card tapped, bag in hand. You don't even fight it anymore. And that resignation, that automatic surrender, is exactly what was designed into the product before it ever touched a shelf. Planned obsolescence isn't a phrase from a conspiracy forum. It's an engineering specification, a boardroom decision. Someone sat in a meeting, looked at a graph of your purchasing behavior, and calculated precisely how short a lifespan would keep you coming back without making you angry enough to look for alternatives. They mapped your frustration threshold the way a predator reads body language, and every dead battery in your junk drawer is proof that their math was right. Now feel what happens in your body when I tell you this. The science to sidestep that entire trap has existed for centuries, not hidden in a classified lab, not locked behind a paywall, sitting in plain sight in the chemistry you learned as a teenager and forgot because nobody told you it mattered. Aluminum foil, baking soda, a scrap of paper towel. Materials so ordinary they're invisible, which is exactly why you never thought to question whether the expensive thing in the blister pack was your only option. That heat rising in your neck right now? That's not anger at a video. That's your nervous system catching up to a pattern it's been living inside without seeing. And once you feel it, you can't unfeel it. You're standing in your own kitchen and you're asking permission. Not out loud, maybe not even consciously, but your hand hovers over the thermostat, over the grocery list, over your own phone, and somewhere in the back of your skull, a voice that isn't yours whispers, "Is this okay? Will this start something?" You don't remember when that voice moved in. You just know it's been there so long it feels like your own thoughts, and that's the part that should terrify you. The body keeps the receipt, even when the mind throws it away. That flinch when your phone buzzes. The way your shoulders climb toward your ears when you hear a car pull into the driveway. The rehearsal loop where you pre-script every sentence before you speak it, editing out anything that might land wrong. You thought that was just anxiety. You thought that was just who you are. But there was a version of you before this. One who made decisions like breathing without bracing for impact. And the cruelest part? The person who did this to you probably never raised their voice. They didn't need to. They understood something most people never study, that if you control someone's sense of reality, you'd never have to control their body. You just make them believe they can't function without your approval. And then you sit back and watch them hand you the keys to everything. The science behind this kind of rewiring isn't new. It's been documented for decades, but nobody walks you through what it actually looks like from the inside, how it feels in your chest at 2 a.m. when you're wide awake, trying to figure out if you're allowed to be upset. That specific loneliness, that particular brand of exhaustion, it has a structure. And once you understand how it was built, you can start to see exactly where the first crack needs to go. Here's the thing nobody talks about. That moment when you actually lay a strip of foil on your counter, press a damp paper towel over it, drop a copper penny on top, and watch a tiny light flicker on. The first feeling isn't excitement, it's anger. A quiet, stomach-level kind of anger, because you realize how ordinary the ingredients are. Aluminum foil you've been wrapping sandwiches in since you were 12. Baking soda that's been sitting in the back of your fridge absorbing odors. A penny you'd normally ignore on the sidewalk. And somehow electrons are flowing between them right now, powering something real, and you're standing there thinking, how many years did I spend assuming this required a factory? You're not broken for feeling that. You're not paranoid. You're not even late to the party. Almost everyone who tries this for the first time goes through the exact same sequence. Disbelief, then a tiny spark of proof, then this creeping realization that the gap between what you were told and what actually works is wider than you ever wanted to admit. That gap doesn't make you gullible. It makes you normal. We all grew up inside the same story. Energy is complicated, batteries are engineered by specialists, and your job is to buy the pack off the shelf and not ask questions. So when you stack a second cell on top of the first, foil, damp towel, coin, repeat, and the LED gets brighter, the feeling shifts again. It's not just anger anymore, it's something closer to recognition, like bumping into someone at a gas station who's also filling a jerry can for the 3rd time this month. And you both just nod, because you both already know the price is absurd and neither of you needed to say it out loud. That's the frequency this lands on. Not a lecture, not a sales pitch, just a shared exhale between people who suspected the same thing and finally got to see it confirmed on their own kitchen counter with their own hands. The baking soda dissolves, ions shuttle between aluminum and copper, and a circuit closes. But the real circuit that closes is the one in your head, the one that connects every time you felt slightly stupid for not knowing something simple, to the plain fact that simplicity was never the problem. Access was, permission was, and now, with nothing more than pantry scraps and 60 seconds of assembly, that permission is something you just gave yourself. So now you have proof sitting on your counter. A glowing LED, a spinning fan blade, even a phone screen flickering to life from a stack of foil and powder. The evidence is right there in your hands. And that raises a question that should genuinely bother you. If this works, if the science is centuries old and the materials cost less than a cup of coffee, why did you have to stumble across some random video to learn about it? Why wasn't this handed to you in a classroom, printed on the back of a cereal box, whispered between neighbors like any other useful life hack? Here's where you have to look at who benefits from your ignorance. Picture the boardroom of a battery corporation. Their entire revenue model is built on one assumption, that you will run out. That the thing in your remote, your flashlight, your kid's toy will die on schedule, and you'll walk back to the store and pay again. Every quarter, every earnings call, every shareholder meeting depends on that cycle repeating. A consumer who knows how to generate power from kitchen scraps is a consumer who stops showing up. That's not a small threat to their bottom line. That's an existential one. So the pressure doesn't come as a loud no. It comes as silence. It comes as absence. You won't find this in a commercial because no ad budget exists to promote something that can't be sold at markup. You won't find it in most curricula because educational materials are shaped by industries that fund them. The control isn't a locked door. It's a room with no signs pointing toward it. And planned obsolescence is the engine underneath all of it. Products designed with a death date baked into their chemistry. Batteries that could last longer but don't because longevity kills repeat purchases. You're not buying energy. You're renting it, one disposable cylinder at a time, from companies that decided your dependency is more profitable than your capability. The person compromising in this arrangement is you, but not because you chose to. You compromised because the alternative was never presented as real. The system didn't argue against DIY power. It simply made sure you never encountered the argument at all. That's the most elegant form of control. Not suppression through force, but suppression through design. You can't reject what you've never been offered. Now, none of this means your homemade cell replaces industrial infrastructure overnight. It won't run your refrigerator or power a hospital, but that's not the point the system is afraid of. What keeps the model intact isn't your need for high wattage appliances. It's your belief that you have no options beyond what's already on the shelf. The moment that belief cracks, even a little, the entire dependency loop weakens, and that crack just happened about 60 seconds ago on your kitchen counter. But there's another layer to this story, one that involves the rules themselves and who gets to write them. First move, stack your boundaries in series. Think of it like those voltaic layers we talked about. One boundary alone produces a flicker of resistance, barely enough to light up a whisper of self-respect. But you layer them. You say no to the small ask that always precedes the big one. You stop explaining your reasoning to people who only ask questions to find new angles of attack. You add another layer by refusing to perform emotional labor on demand, another by declining invitations that come wrapped in guilt. Each layer adds voltage. Each one makes the next refusal easier, until the person who used to drain you with a single sentence now hits a wall they cannot talk their way through. Second move, run parallel systems. Do not source all your validation, all your information, all your emotional current from one person or one institution. The moment your entire sense of reality flows through a single channel, whoever controls that channel controls you. Build multiple stacks. Get your feedback from different people who have no relationship to each other. Cross-reference what you're told against what you observe with your own senses. When someone says your memory is wrong, check the text thread, check the email, check the date on the photograph. Parallel sources make gaslighting structurally impossible. Third move, and this is the one most people skip. Experiment with. What you have been told is off limits. Every manipulator installs invisible regulations in your head, rules about what you're allowed to feel, who you're allowed to trust, what questions you're not supposed to ask. Test those rules the way you would test a new electrolyte in a home circuit. Try the thing they said would not work. Talk to the person they warned you about. Ask the question they called disrespectful. Watch what actually happens versus what you were told would happen. The gap between those two outcomes is the exact measurement of how much someone has been engineering your reality. None of this requires their permission. None of it requires a confrontation. You do not announce that you are building a new power source. You simply build it quietly in your own kitchen with materials they never thought to take away from you. And by the time they notice the lights are on and you are no longer asking them for batteries, the infrastructure is already in place. That shift from consumer to generator is not just clever. It rewrites the entire relationship contract without a single argument. Here's the thing nobody warns you about when you finally start living inside your own boundaries. The first few weeks feel worse, not better. Your chest still tightens when the phone buzzes. Your hand still hovers over the reply button at 2 a.m. The muscle memory of compliance doesn't vanish just because you intellectually decided to stop. And that gap, that silence where the old pattern used to live, it can feel like grief, because it is grief. You're mourning a version of yourself that kept the peace by disappearing. But pay attention to what happens in that silence. You start noticing small, almost embarrassing things. The way your shoulders drop an inch when you walk into your own apartment alone. The fact that you can finish a meal without scanning someone else's face for approval. The strange novelty of choosing a movie without calculating whether your choice will trigger a mood. These are not dramatic victories. No one throws a parade for the person who finally stopped explaining themselves to someone who never intended to listen. Yet each one of those micro moments is proof that your nervous system is recalibrating. It is learning, slowly, that safety can come from inside the room you're standing in, not from managing the emotional weather of someone else. This is where identity actually gets rebuilt, not in some grand declaration, not in a single confrontation that fixes everything. It happens in the accumulated weight of tiny choices that all point the same direction. You chose silence over performance. You chose the door over the argument. You chose your own confusion over someone else's false clarity. And every single one of those choices carved a new groove in your brain, one that says you are allowed to exist without earning it. That choice is quiet. It does not announce itself. It just sits in your chest the next time someone tests the old boundary, and instead of the familiar collapse, you feel something unfamiliar. A pause, a breath,